Before we begin, I would just like to remind our audience members to please mute themselves to avoid any background noise. And now I'd like to hand it over to Jonah to start us off.
Let us begin this event with a short prayer and an acknowledgement of country. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Lord, as we go into this meeting, we place ourselves before you, for you are filled with the beauty and the light and care deeply about us. Help us to value and appreciate those we are gathering with. May your light enfold us. Saint Luke, pray for us. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
We would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the direct people of the lands that I am speaking to you from today. I also acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which each of you are living, learning, and working from today. As we share our acknowledge today, we also pay our respects to our elders, both past and present.
We would like to extend a warm welcome to everyone joining us today for our YCS Q&A event. We would also like to take this opportunity to say a hearty thank you to our panelists who have volunteered their time to share their thoughts on the topic. Over the course of this term, Bogdan, Fiba, Georgia, and I have facilitated this important discussion with our other YCS members. We hope you gain new knowledge and perspectives from us in this event overall.
YCS is an international movement present in 80 countries, which are run by students to enable the youth to be representatives of change in their local, national, or global community. The movement uses the See, Judge, Act method, which allows students to see what is happening in this world, judge this in accordance to their faith and beliefs, and take action to make change. The St. Luke's YCS group was established this year. Together, we have explored a range of issues that we view as important in our world today. In term one, we began with an inward look to increasing belonging at St. Luke's for students. In term two, we delved into racial stereotyping, as it was an issue most of our members had faced within their lifetime. Finally, this past term, we have been exploring the connection between environment and mental health, as they were both issues that our members were passionate about.
Why are we here today? Well, over the past 2 terms, the YCS members of St. Luke's have explored the idea of how the environment we live in impacts our mental health. During these tough times, the topic of improving our mental health has been a priority for many individuals. We discovered through numerous discussions that the environment we live in has significantly contributed to how we behave and contribute to society. It was during one of our initial discussions when we all came across similar questions that we were repeating. What will happen if current environmental threats get worse? How will that impact our mental health? We further investigated and came to the conclusion that indeed, they do hold a significant connection. We further questioned what will occur if climate change, an environmental threat that is already occurring, continued at its current devastating rates, and the impact that would have on rising mental health concerns in individuals and young people.
We have selected a panel that will be able to provide a range of perspectives in our discussion today. We thank each and every one of you for your time today. I would invite each panelist, as I call their name out, to provide a brief overview of their role to give us an insight of the perspective they bring. So first off, Sebastian, Salaske, could you please introduce yourself to the audience?
Yes, thank you so much for inviting me. I am the Peace, Justice and Ecology Coordinator for the Diocese of Parramatta. I only started in this role in April, and it was previously called Social Justice Coordinator. And I think with this name change, we can see how various topics, peace, justice, ecology, and many more really are very closely linked to each other and intertwined. And I think the same applies to mental health and environment. So while I'm not an expert on mental health myself, I certainly am for environmental issues, and I'm very keen on having this discussion tonight. Thank you all.
Thank you, Sebastian. So now I'm going to hand it over to Claire Thomas to introduce us to her role.
Thank you, Bogdan, and greetings, everyone. It's just so good to see you all, the students of St. Luke's. It's just a real delight. So I am the New South Wales Schools and Community Engagement Manager, and situated, you know me from the food drives, all the fantastic food drives that you all have done since 2017, thanks to the leadership of the school, particularly Mrs. Atkins and Miss Chan. So look, you might be asking yourself, Jesuit Social Services, okay, you know, Ignite Food Store. However, that's just one of many programs that we lead in, and ecological justice is a particular concern that we hold very dear to our hearts at Jesuit Social Services. But I won't say too much, because as we go through our conversation tonight, yeah, you'll hear, and hopefully we'll learn more about that. And it's sensational to see the work of young Christian students and young Christian workers today too. So thank you.
Okay, thank you for your response, Claire. Now I'm going to hand it over to Alicja Borciuch to introduce herself to us.
Thank you, Bogdan. I'm really excited to be in this space, and thank you so much to St. Luke's Catholic College YCS group for definitely organising such a great Q&A event. And I'm definitely excited to be in this exciting and amazing space and share with these amazing panelists and amazing people as well that are here with us tonight. A little bit about myself. I work from 9 to 5 as a public servant, but also I'm very much involved with Parramatta Young Christian Workers. I'm one of the key leaders. I'm very much passionate about climate justice and as well as climate change, and addressing what's happening at the moment with the crisis in climate change. And with Parramatta Young Christian Workers, we've got a range of actions that we've been doing for the past few years, looking at sustainability, community gardening, vegan cooking classes, documentary nights, just to name a few, just to reflect on what's happening in terms of the current circumstances, current situations that we are at the moment. But I just want to say a big thank you again to St. Luke's Catholic College YCS group for having me here today.
Okay, thank you so much to you too, Alicja. I'm going to hand it over to Mika Corbin to introduce herself to us.
Thank you, Bogdan. Again, thank you for inviting me to be part of your panel. I feel very, very honoured to have been invited by such an amazing young group of men and women that I had the utmost privilege of teaching. I have been teaching now for 22 years in the Parramatta Diocese. In my life before I came to St. Luke's, I was a science teacher at another high school in the diocese, and I was there for 20 years. During that time, I had an environmental group. I was a teacher of chemistry and earth and environmental science, which is a very, very big passion of mine. I have been part of the Hawkesbury and Nepean environmental group that is run through Penrith City Council. Also, in my time at my previous school, I facilitated planting around about 6,000 trees that goes on, or that blends in with the Cumberland woodland plain, which is a critically endangered environment that is only located in New South Wales in the world, a very, very special place. And when I came over to St. Luke's, I was still a science teacher, but then this year I am now the wellbeing coordinator. So I have kind of merged my two passions of environmental and the wellbeing of my students. And I now look after the wellbeing and mental health, I suppose, of stage 5 at St. Luke's.
Thank you, Mika. So finally, I'd like to hand it over to Reese Nunez to introduce herself to us.
Hi, I'm Grace, and I'm a St. Luke's student in Year 10. I've been attending St. Luke's since Year 7. I was also a YCS leader in Term 2, and I think that it will be really interesting today to give my insight as to the Q&A, because I feel like the student's perspective on all the environmental issues going on right now could be really useful to know. And yeah.
So as part of this program, us students have created a couple of questions to ask our panelists. So for our first question for this evening, are you aware of the impact that our environment has on our mental health? So Sebastian, would you like to start us off with your thoughts, please?
Sure. Yes, I am aware. As I said, I'm not an expert on mental health, but even for myself as an individual, I feel that the environment has a huge impact on my personal mental health. Being able to be in nature, to spend time in nature is a very, very positive contributor to my own well-being. And at the same time, I'm also aware how bad environmental influence can impact my own mental health negatively. Like very hot days can make me feel very fatigued and tired and you know, burnt out. Bad air quality gives me headaches. And I think these are just some very basic examples from everyday life, how the two issues really closely relate to each other.
Thank you for your response, Sebastian. And I personally believe that I feel some of those fatigues that you get from being in a hot room all day. Now, moving on to Reese. Why do you believe, from a student perspective, that there is a correlation between the environment and our mental health?
As a student myself, I feel as if the connection between the environment and mental health are really important to recognize. This is because personally, I've been beginning to realize the severity of our changing climate and the consequences that will come along with that, not only for myself, but the future generation as well. Now, when saying that, we can see the connection between how the collapse of the environment from issues such as climate change will affect the way students will think of the world. Because if the environment does not get sustained in time, not only will the world begin to collapse, although the mental health of young individuals will as well. Because I believe that they will lose that sense of motivation and that sense of purpose if the state of the environment is not benefiting, and whether their living conditions could become heavily impacted in the coming future.
Thank you, Reese. And I'd like to ask you the same question, Claire. Why do you believe there is a correlation between the environment and our mental health?
Wow, it's a good question. And I suppose, if anything, that connection between, I mean, even as I look outside, I can see the trees. I don't know if it's a huge wind blowing out where you are, but there's a gale really blowing about, and I can see people walking. We're deeply connected to our environment, and so it obviously having that connection where some students have already expressed over a period of time that when we see what's happening, and right in our backyard of Western Sydney, where we had our fires across the Blue Mountains, where we had the floods across the plains of Penrith and the Nepean River, and it's really on our doorstep. And so even as we felt the smoke haze, you know, it affects us totally, physically, emotionally, and obviously mentally. And I share the same sentiments as Sebastian. I'm a teacher, I'm an educator, I'm not a counsellor or a social worker. However, my colleagues and co-workers in Victoria and Northern Territory and across Western Sydney who work alongside people, particularly those who are really quite marginalised on the fringes of our community, and also as Pope Francis has mentioned too, on a global scale, it's unfortunate that actually the most people who experience profound disadvantage and challenges I've often shared in assemblies with you all in Mount Druitt particularly, yes, the heat is felt more, but if you don't have air conditioning, or if you don't have funds, as I've shared, in terms of not only paying for groceries, but funds to catch a train or bus to go for 2 hours to the beach, or you don't have a pool, or you can't afford in terms of certain, because electricity, etc., or if you're just struggle from paycheck to paycheck, that sometimes the concern of the climate is just fourth down the list. However, for us, in where we are in schools and in our parishes and also across the diocese, it's becoming more and more of a concern. So there is a connection. I suppose what's important is that and this is what you all have done. There's a choice in this. We have a choice about how do we respond. And I think that this is a real opportunity for us through conversation, just like we would as we have in this, challenging period of lockdown because of COVID. There's been time for us to be still, to listen to one another, but also go in your backyard, go for walks in the bush to help and assist with our mental health. And I think that that's important, that so whilst we can be affected in the way in terms of it can at times feel very overwhelming, not only for ourselves here, but also globally, it's really important to ask ourselves in and through our mental and our emotional capacities of, well, okay, what's the choice here? How can I respond? And I think this is a great opportunity for us to offer to other panelists, this space of our response.
Thank you so much, Claire and Reese, for answering that question. And I also agree with both of you how this environment, like poor environmental conditions, we all as humans, we feel the negative effects that it has on us, especially through the natural disasters, the bushfires, the floods that have impacted our communities. We all feel the effects of those. So over to you now, Alicia. As a YCW worker and climate advocate, you would have explored future impacts. So I ask you, how can these mental health issues and environmental problems impact future generations?
Thank you, Bogdan, for that question. And yeah, definitely, mental health issues and environmental problems go hand in hand when it comes to impacting future generations. The most at risk when it comes to climate change, the impact of climate change is children, basically the future generations. And if you have a look at it, basically, with what's happening, we're seeing global warming, we're seeing even especially this year, we're seeing a lot of climate disasters, heat waves, bushfires, floods, and it will definitely impact future generations. Especially, when you look at environment and what other panelists shared, environment influences us, shapes us. It's that growing process when we grow from birth to adulthood. And for children, there's a lot of research out there that for children, it even starts at before birth, basically. When you already have, climate change impacting the environment as it is, it already starts to traumatize the expecting mother. Physically and mentally, it starts to impact the developing fetus as well, and it starts to increase the vulnerability to disease. And when you look at the different milestones as well for children, if we start looking at now for children as well, what future that they have, already we're looking at children being more prone to infectious disease, environmental toxins, heat waves, dehydration, again, that's impacting on cognition, on learning. If we then look at, from ages to 6 to 12, again, you're looking at, again, looking at acute and chronic environmental stresses that for children already, they are understanding what's happening around them, the environment. They're already starting to see climate change as being the impact on the world around them. And already there's that stress and anxiety. And then we look at adolescents, even now for adolescents, for young people, you're already seeing as well that time period for adolescence where there's a lot of social changes, physiological changes, hormonal changes as well. And then when you get challenges, it starts to overwhelm, and again, you see heat waves that can cause, again, cognition, learning, disruptive sleeping, so you see how mental health issues and environmental problems go hand in hand for the future generations, from early on to adolescence, and then transitioning to adulthood. So definitely there's that need to definitely address climate change, because it definitely goes hand in hand with mental health and environment as it is.
Thank you, Alicia, for giving us a very insightful glimpse of what our reality may look like. And I totally agree with you in saying that how the environment that we live in shapes us, and it has like it's a very core part of our identity. So in saying that, I would like to point out the next question to Mika. Mika, what would an ideal world look like in the context of this connection between mental health and the environment?
Thanks, Phoebe. That's a really interesting question. I have noticed, both myself with close family and some very close friends, that if they don't have access to an environment, and even just to an environment that is potentially just even a backyard, it doesn't have to be something that is absolutely pristine, but the impact that has on one's mental health is incredible. There is nothing better than getting outside in the sunshine, going for a walk in the local bush. I've got the bush pretty much on my back doorstep where I am, and it's just amazing. You can go for, wander hours through the bush, and when you're there, it helps you, I find, to just recenter yourself, recenter who you are, and to appreciate what we actually have here. But then on the other hand, we know that in Australia, we have got one of the worst impacts of climate change happening here. We have got one of the highest rates of extinction in mammals in the world, and our mammals aren't found anywhere else in the world. Yet we are still doing things that are going to harm our environment. The harming of our environment is causing impacts to the mental health of not just adults, but to our teenagers. Our teenagers are so vulnerable, and we have to look after our environment, because if we don't have those places to go to be in our environment and to appreciate the beauty that we have, we do suffer. Our children suffer, our adolescents, adults of all ages suffer hugely, and we need to look after what we have so that the population we have now and our future populations can still be, or can still have, good mental health, because we know that if you don't have good mental health, nothing else happens. And I have seen that in so many people over my years of teaching. And I love my job. I love what I do. But I have seen how the impacts of climate change are really affecting these young people in front of me. And many of our young people feel that there is nothing that they can do. They're this one person. But one person can make a huge difference. And that's something that I've, have said many, many times. if we can do one good thing for our environment, it's not just good for the environment, it's also very good for us, for our own mental health, because we know that we're contributing positively to the world. We're doing something that is bigger than us, you know, doing something for our global community, whether that be, you know, something good for our local bush that's, you know, across the road, or whether it have another bigger impact somewhere else in the world. But I think the two, mental health and our environment, are linked, and they will forever be linked. And we need to look at looking after one is going to help us look after another. So.
Thank you so much for what you have said, Mika. I definitely also agree with the fact that we need to be aware of how we can harness the benefits of the environment in order to aid our own mental health. Moving on, I think that we should consider the current context we are in, and it is also important to explore the COVID situation in regards to this. So, back to you, Sebastian. To what extent do you think COVID restrictions have hindered our ability to connect with nature? And what impact do you think this is having on the mental health of individuals?
Thank you. I think the extent to which the pandemic, and especially the recent lockdown that we're just finally moving out of slowly, has had on people and on their ability to connect with nature has really been very different depending on where people live. I think the recent lockdown has really shown that we don't only have social differences across Greater Sydney, but also a huge difference in people's ability to access nature for recreation, but also for their mental health, and access and have access to nature and the environment. I think, as Mika just has said, if you are fortunate enough to live somewhere where the bush is right at your backyard, or at least you have a nice park, a lake, a river, or even the beach nearby, then people have been very fortunate, and being able to go out, even though they are restricted to 5 kilometers or a bit more, to go out and spend time outdoors and meet with, you know, a buddy outside, that has been a huge help for people's mental health during the pandemic and during lockdown. But where people don't have that opportunity because they live in an area that is so urbanized that there aren't any parks, there isn't any clean water, there is no bush nearby, and now they're restricted to 5Ks and can't travel to the beach, or they can't travel to anywhere that is close to nature, or they don't have their own backyard because they live in an apartment block. I think that is where we have really seen how the restrictions have impacted people's ability to connect with nature. And there are already studies that show how it has impacted their physical health, their well-being, because they can't get fresh air, because they can't be out and exercise in nature, but also their mental health. I'm not sure if you know of the Sydney Alliance. I think YCS is involved with the Sydney Alliance as well. The Diocese of Parramatta is too, and it is a big network across Greater Sydney that is trying to bring lots of organizations together to work for social change, for environmental change. And they have just recently published a paper where they are asking our state government to consider important issues as they try to bring New South Wales back on track after the lockdown and basically restart our society and our economy. And giving people access to a park, a river, some sort of environment is one of the asks they have put in this paper, to really make sure that we get more equality across Greater Sydney as to people's ability to connect to nature, because it's so important.
Thank you, Sebastian. And what you have said is really insightful, and it's true, because like COVID restrictions have took a great impact on our lives, and it has hindered many people when it comes to their connection with the nature. And now, Alicia, I would like to ask you a question. How has nature helped individuals with their mental health in this lockdown situation?
So definitely, thank you, Feba, for that question. So I think with nature and with the lockdown situation, it did give us opportunity to definitely put that pause button, I think, and definitely take that opportunity to take a break. And definitely, I think, explore our neighborhoods. I think explore our neighborhoods and explore the nature around us. You know, it gave us that quiet time to definitely reflect. I think nature has a really positive impact on our mental health when it comes to healing, to recovery, to just being able to just have that moment to meditate and think where you are at that moment, at that present time. But it has a beautiful way of that connection, that sense of purpose, that sense of identity. You know, Indigenous people have such a beautiful way when it comes to that connection, that relationship to country, to land. And I think nature, I think if it wasn't for nature, I think we would have had, you know, our mental health wouldn't have been as it is. And I think nature has definitely allowed us to, you know, go for, you know, exercises, go for walks, you know, take our pets, you know, for walks as well. You know, just appreciate the different sounds that we can hear, the birds singing. I think as well, what I noticed as well during lockdown, there were less cars on the street. And I think nature was so visible. I think nature was so visible at that time of lockdown. And you could hear basically, you know, birds chirping. You know, you could hear that nature being more alive, I think, during lockdown. And I think you know, when you see nature around you, you know, you see as well God being present in nature as well. And again, is that connection that we have with nature as human beings. You know, we see creation around us, and it definitely improves our mental health, our positive outlook on life.
Thank you so much for that, Alicia. I also think that being present in the moment and just spending time outside is so much better than just being cooped up in our rooms. And to continue, since we are students here, let's explore a little bit further the context of youth today. So my question is to you, Reese. What do you believe are the impacts on children and youth of a climate crisis?
So like I mentioned previously, the youth of today will take into consideration just how serious climate change would be. And I believe that this could result in both negative and positive impacts because depending on how children become more aware of the issue, they will either get pushed to make a change in the world or even the total opposite. Because as I said, there are still chances where they will lose that sense of motivation and even try to make a difference because of the challenges they are overwhelmed with in the environment today. So personally, I'm concerned for my generation and how my future will be set out, especially trying to live with the fact that the world is slowly falling apart at the moment.
Thank you so much, Reese, for your response. And personally, as being part of this generation's youth, I also feel that we are pressured to make a difference from the past issues, and I'm also concerned about the future and whether they'll be too overwhelmed to make change and if it's too late from there. So from there, Miko, being an earth and environmental science teacher and the well-being coordinator, you have potentially seen firsthand the connection between the two aspects. So do you have anything to add to the question of what do you believe are the impacts on children and youth of a climate crisis?
Oh, Bogdan, there's a huge, absolutely huge impact to our children and to our youth. Again, as both you and Reese have said, you feel that all of the older generations, and I am one of those older generations, where you're putting it all on you. You have to fix this. You have to fix the problems of that everybody else before you has done. And you guys are 15 and 16. Like that kind of pressure being put on you is just unrealistic. You're teenagers, you're still trying to work out your place in the world and who you are. What gives my generation and, or any adult the right to put that much pressure on our youth when you're still trying to work out who you are? It's unrealistic, and it's unfair that we are putting that onto our youth and onto our children, because children and teenagers, you take that on board and you think, oh, I have to fix it, I have to do something. But then you can either be driven to do something amazing, which all of our young people are amazing, phenomenal humans, or you can feel so unbelievably overwhelmed with it that you just sit there and go, I'm one person, I can't do anything. And so adults actually need to take some of that on. Adults really need to take a lot of that on board, because we don't have the right to say this is your fault, your fault, and you guys need to be our saviors and you guys need to come and fix it. As adults, we need to take the lead and say, actually, we're going to help you solve these problems. We are going to be there with you to guide you, and let's get in there and let's work together. Because if we can do that as a community, regardless of the size of our community, if it's a big community, if it's only something very, very small, a group of 5 people can make a difference. One person can make a difference. And if adults can take some of that ownership and take some of that stress, worry, concern, feeling of overwhelmedness off our children and off our adolescents, then that is only going to positively impact our young people, because you don't have to fix it. We all have to fix it. And that's not just going to be good for our children, our youth, and for the adults. It's going to benefit our environment. It's going to benefit everybody. And that is, I think, what we need to do. Everybody has to take ownership of this, because that has a positive impact on our young people. Something I'm a little bit passionate about, I think, there.
Thank you so much, Mika. I certainly enjoyed all of your wonderful insights. And like Bogdan and Risa said, we are a part of the future generation. And I think that as a whole, we could only hope that what we do now will make even the smallest bit of a difference. Our next question is to you, Claire. How does the heat affect the students' capabilities to learn in a classroom environment, in your opinion?
Oh, wow. I mean, it's pretty clear, I think. I've a couple of times when I have visited St. Luke's and have had the pleasure of co-teaching with Mrs. Atkins, remember the sweltering heat. And you can't think straight. It's, particularly if it's a Friday afternoon and you can see the weekend around the corner, it's very clear that our ability to think clearly, to engage, but I just want to echo Ms. Corbin's comments about the importance of not being alone. I think as adults, and I've really noticed this coming out of schools and now working in a community organisation such as Jesuit Social Services, we're really in the work of what we call community resilience. So, with all the bushfires that took place across Victoria and the extreme heat that's happening in Northern Territory, we're also based in the Northern Territory alongside traditional custodians, the First Nations communities there in the NT. And what we're noticing more and more, so people who are in research and people who are the policymakers and also people in our organisation who are really deep in that understanding of climate change. And they're actually, which is really, I've learnt a lot. And what they're sharing with us, it's about how can we adapt How can we evolve? How can we change? How can we learn? And it's really important that young people play a key role in helping us adults to put the finger on the pulse like you've all done today, but also raise the questions, write letters, campaign, have a voice, because you will be the future citizens in terms of voting, not yet, but you will be our future. So it's crucial that your voice, you share about how hot it was as you were learning in Marsden Park. But wherever you go beyond those gates, wherever you make a difference, you'll remember. So you need to make, in some ways, us accountable too. So we can do that together. And I think partnering together is so crucial, because we, as Sebastian pointed out, Sydney Alliance, Young Christian Students, we cannot do this all, Anna. We've got to do this collectively, just like in your family with your elders and your grandparents grew you. We, as a Catholic community, we've got to grow one another as the Pope is leading us to take action, particularly leading up to the Scotland conference that's coming around the corner in Glasgow. There are heaps of campaigns of letter writing, and I can provide those later, or what Valentina can provide that too, and Ms. Chant. But I think it's really important that from our experiences of it being hotter, particularly in Australia, but also wherever our experiences at home or work, our families, Seven Hills, if you know of the suburb of Seven Hills, they're doing an amazing campaign of Voices for Power with Sydney Alliance. And there's just so much that we can do, that Sebastian has already spoken very powerfully of what we can engage in. So I think, whilst we can be a sense of feeling overwhelmed, this is why mindfulness, which you all practice regularly, I understand, prayer, really, take the chill, like, pardon the pun, but to take a deep breath and to say, okay, what can I attend to? Where can I respond? What letter? What's my priority? Yes, my learning is undeniably number one. My family, friends, yes. However, how can I be an agent in bringing about change? So just remember, and also your classroom. How about in terms of hydration and ways that we can keep the classroom cool? How can we speak to teachers? And maybe that's already happening, about keeping our school cool. Cool schools, which is also another initiative, but I can talk about that another time. I'll stop talking. Thanks. Sorry.
Thank you, Claire. And I like how you gave us an idea of turning our pain, which is like, being in like sweltering classrooms while we're learning, especially if it's on a Friday afternoon, and turning that pain into power by raising our voices to, fight against what's occurring right now, like climate change, and like going against people who are against it and saying what we want. And I really like how you gave us that inspiration to do so. So if anyone who's wanting to explore this idea further, I encourage you to check out toohottolearn.org. And next, I would like to ask Sebastian, is there any way you see to prevent or reduce the impact that the environment is having on mental health of individuals?
Well, I'm assuming you mean the negative impacts that the environment can have, because we have obviously seen there are positive impacts of a good environment that can be very beneficial. But yes, the impacts of a damaged environment, environmental pollution, heat, and so on, they are really having negative impacts on our mental health. And I think on the one hand, there's many things that everyone can do as an individual. We can, obviously all try to keep our environment clean, to, make sure we don't leave trash, or we reduce packaging, we practice recycling, that everyone individually reduces the emission of things that pollute our air and cause climate change. So, try to cycle, use a bike or public transport instead of driving with a car. All these kind of things that each and every one of us can do. And I'm sure a lot of you are well aware of those many things you can do. You know, join a local bush care group, or start gardening with your family or in your school, so you can produce vegetables and you know, have a little chicken farm to produce eggs, and therefore reduce packaging, and that goods for our livelihood have to be carried around across the world and across the country. But while all of that is important, I very much agree with what Claire has just said, that we can't leave it to the individual. We can't leave it to every one of us just by themselves, because that will make us feel overwhelmed. And, you know, all these efforts to do something for the environment can also have its own mental health impact, because it can increase anxiety, and it can increase this idea of, it's just too much, I'm helpless, how can I keep up with the need of changing? And I think that is really where it is good to search for allies, join groups, even, you know, be in a group like the one you are, be in a YCS local group at St. Luke's, and exchange ideas and think about what can we do together to reduce the negative impacts that the environment has on our mental health, and, you know, doing that by reducing our negative impacts that we as humans and as a society have on the environment. That's what can make us all feel empowered, and actually, rather than becoming overwhelmed and anxious about climate change and about the future, help us to channel this concern into something good that we can do together as a Catholic community in Western Sydney, but also as a community across Australia and around the world.
Thank you, Sebastian, for your response. And I see that for this question, we may see the issue of the environment as way too big for all of us to make a difference on. But if we all made a small change, you know, in our lifestyle, possibly something local, if we all brought our actions together, we would be able to make a bigger change for our world. Over to you now, Alicja. Using your advocacy experience, perhaps you could inform us, how can we, as students and active members of the St. Luke's community, better our world in both the domains of environments and mental health?
Thank you, Bogdan. And I think, like, touching on upon what Sebastian and Claire said, definitely, I think there's definitely for students, you're already doing so much. I think St. Luke's YCS group, and like in terms of like what we're doing here today, the Q&A event, it's so important in terms of being informed, being educated about the environment, about the impact of climate change on mental health. Again, you know, Pope Francis, he wrote in the encyclical, you know, in terms of for us, in terms of with the environment, what's happening with the rise in global warming. Again, it's basically our role to definitely, you know, change our habits, change our ways, be those spheres of influence, you know, and as students and, you know, active members of the St. Luke's community, definitely have those spaces to talk with each other about, you know, positive environmental practices, you know, speak with like-minded, you know, individuals, you know, feel that positive energy when it comes to creating change, making a difference. You're not alone, and don't feel that, you know, that as an individual, you may feel that you're not enough, or it's, you know, it's small, but it makes a difference. And I think I think each small action, you know, each small action that you do, it equals, when you multiply around the whole world, it equals big changes in the environment. And I think with mental health, the moment you address the impacts that are happening in the environment, the moment you start, you know, leading a sustainable lifestyle, you know, the moment you take, the moment you choose more greener choices, greener options, being more sustainable, being more energy efficient, The moment you start addressing what's happening in the environment, you know, looking at reducing your ecological footprint, the moment you see your mental health become more positive because you know you're addressing what's happening in the environment, you're addressing what's happening in terms of climate change, you're making those actions which can basically, you know, make that mental health more positive. You know, that you know that your actions are making a positive change, positive difference. But definitely when it comes to community, do it together, definitely have that space. And I think YCS, you've got such a great, amazing individuals in YCS with St. Luke's, and definitely have that space where you can reflect, where you can review your actions, your how everyone is going. So important to follow up. How is everyone going with the actions when it comes to addressing the environment? And you will definitely notice that you're not going to be overwhelmed, that you're going to be resilient with each other when it comes to the environment and mental health.
Thank you, Alicia. And what you've said has been really empowering to not only just me, but to our other young adults here present. And it's just not you, but what the other panelists has said has definitely empowered us for us as the younger generation to certainly think about our ways of life and our ways in which we can lead a much more sustainable lifestyle that will not only greatly impact our environment, but also impact our mental health. And thank you for that insight. So for our final question for tonight, it is an open question for our panelists to respond. Why do you believe is a way for all individuals to get involved in attempting to better the environment around us, locally to reduce the negative effects on mental health caused by the declining environmental system? So,
I've got one concrete example that Alicia just reminded me. For those that are old enough to remember, I don't know if you remember that we used to have incinerators in our backyard where we would burn. I can see Miss Bowder, Mrs. Atkins and Miss Corbin nodding, and in total embarrassment. So the story was my job with my father, we would get the paper, we would have an incinerator in our backyard and we would put it and we would light it, and you would see the burning of paper in the backyard. Now, over a period of time, not only were incinerators banned, however, then recycling bins. So raise your hands, or you've all got a recycling bin, haven't you? Yellow and green bin, I'd imagine. We all. Now that, I remember hearing Phil Glendenning sharing this story because we all remembered in that room, oh my gosh, with embarrassment, that's what we did. However, so the answer to this, what do you believe is a way to get involved to better the environment? Like, I also don't want to embarrass Sister Elsa McKinnon, who's on this clip. Are you there, Elsa? Are you there? Hello? Oh, is she not there? She's gone away. But she was my school principal, and she encouraged us to letter write. And we wrote letters and letters upon letters way back then for change through Amnesty International at the time. And we wrote for the freedom of Nelson Mandela. And we remember watching on the TV Nelson Mandela being freed, but that was a whole year of letter writing. Now, we weren't only doing it, other Catholic schools, the whole nation, the globe. So I think there's sometimes, I know that was a long time ago, but I still remember that it's really important that there's something in our brains, and this is something I know as a teacher, but also working with counsellors, the importance of our brain of caring for another, of human touch, solidarity, getting off our tushies and picking up rubbish, getting out and being active is the way that we can. I mean, now the restrictions are lifting, but it's this altruism or caring for other people, that this sense of solidarity is catching people. And in Western Sydney and where we are right here, we've got so much work to do, but we can do it together and it's going to be all good. That's my response.
So it looks like we have a bit more time left. So panelists, do you have anything else to add to our conversation tonight? So is there any comments you would like to add on the issue that we're talking about?
I'd just like to say, Bogdan, that the issue that you guys have raised, linking mental health and the environment, is fantastic. And for that to come from some amazing young men and women, you guys need to be incredibly proud of yourselves, because we are very proud of you for bringing this issue to light and for enabling us all to have an incredible conversation about this. And we're all on the same page. We can do something together. Like, none of us are alone in this. We all care about this and we can all do something. And as you said earlier, Bogdan, if every person does one small thing, there are 7 billion people in the world. If 7 billion tiny things, that's massive. And start having this conversation is getting the ball rolling. And it has helped reignite my passion, because I've been, trying to find my way the last 2 years being at St. Luke's and being in a new setting. But you have helped me reignite that this is something that I am incredibly passionate about, and I want to get back to school and just be doing something, and I would love to be working with you guys.
So Sebastian, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I would like to add to that I think Mika actually said it, that we as adults have a duty to support you as the young generation, to not solve the crisis, but to support you in making your way into our common future. And I think I can speak for all of us that are here tonight who are adults, that at least when it comes to us, you can count on us. So if you want to do some sort of action as a school community, write a letter to the Prime Minister, or do some local action to clean up the environment, and you need our help, just call us or send us an email, and we'll support you in any way that we can. Thank you for this great opportunity tonight, and for being wonderful facilitators.
Thank you to you too, Sebastian, for your amazing comments. Are there any final things the panelists would want to add?
I just want to say thank you as well to YCS, to Miss Chand and Miss Atkins. Just really am encouraged, and on behalf of Jesuit Social Services want to say thank you for the opportunity. I've actually shared with our Executive Director, Susie Maloney, who knows about this particular Q&A, and Sally Cowling, our General Manager for Centre for Just Places, and she's been having a couple of chats. And you're one of the first schools in not only Western Sydney, but also in Sydney that's doing this particular kind of connection. And my co-worker, Jack Piper, he works across Victoria, and particularly Darebin Council, and we are already, just to, like Sebastian shared, Sebastian and myself, we are on a couple of committees together, so we're working towards this. So please, we're just ready. So all we have to do is have a meeting, a lunchtime meeting, a conversation, and teachers, just thank you. What a great school St. Luke's is, great school. And so, yeah, thank you.
Alicia, do you have anything to add?
I might just add to the last question. I think in terms of that last question, in terms of how individuals can definitely get involved when it comes to addressing the environment, definitely start with your start where you are, basically. What is your reality, your experiences? So if it's the school community, definitely it's so important. I think Claire shared, I think that solidarity, that unity, that definitely start where you are at the moment. You know, what is your reality? What is your experience? If it's at school, whether it's in the office, whether it's at work, whether it's, with your family. Again, it's looking at where you are at the moment, your present time, where can you take action, and getting people involved. I think that's so important, getting people involved, and in terms of that connection, in terms of mental health, the moment you start working with other people and you feel that passion, that energy, that drive, that motivation to make a change, you will notice again that it has that positive influence again on your mental health, but also that, they're also addressing the concerns when it comes to the environment, when it comes to climate change, and echoing what Claire as well shared, and Sebastian, you guys are doing such an amazing job. YCS, you should definitely be so proud, St. Luke's, YCS, that you're starting that conversation. You're already creating that energy, that motivation, that drive for all of us to definitely make a change, make a difference, to work with each other. It's so important, again, to work with each other. And you have such an important role, you young people, you students, you have such an important role. And definitely you have such an important role when it comes to addressing the environment, the changes, the climate change, because this is impacting you. You're the future generation. You'll be transitioning to adulthood. And your experiences, your stories, your realities are so relevant, so important, and your voices need to be heard. So definitely, we want to definitely get you empowered, and definitely you guys have empowered us in turn as well. So definitely I want to say thank you so much to YCS from St. Luke's. You're definitely amazing people, and this opportunity that we just had tonight, I think says so much, so much. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Claire and Alicia, for your insightful comments. So on that note, this has been a really engaging conversation. And now I'd like to hand it over to Michaela to wrap up this event.
First off, we would like to thank everyone who was able to attend this Q&A event. And we especially thank the guests for taking time out of their evening to be here with us and answer our questions with such depth and insight. We hope this is a conversation that will be the start of a new conversation in your own context, so that together we can improve our environment and thus reduce the impact of poor environment and the climate crisis on mental health. We challenge you all to do one small thing in the next week to assist in this cause. Thanks again to all our panelists and guests today. If you do have any questions for our students, please feel free to hang back. We will be available for the next 5 minutes. So take care, everyone, and have a good night. Thank you.